Hi, fourth graders. I'm coming to you from my living room, and I'm with my favorite reading buddy, Rondo. He's a good boy. I'm going to give him treats every once in a while, so that he'll stick around. Not that he doesn't love me, but he loves treats even more. So I want to do a little first chapter Friday with you guys, even though it isn't Friday, it's actually Sunday. But I have a great book that I want to show you. It's a book that I do every year. It's on my iPad because all my books are in school. But this is the name of the book. It's Dewey the Library Cat by DeweyCh1. It is a true story. And it takes place in Iowa, in a library, of course. And instead of telling you a whole bunch about the book, I think I'm just going to start to read the first chapter because that will tell you a lot of info about the book. Okay, here we go. Rondo and I. But now, oh, here he is. His head's back up. We'll give him one more treat before we get started. He loves treats. Okay, here we go. Oh, now he's leaving me. All right, so here we go. Chapter 1 is called Lost and Found, and you guys know how I love that when the author titles the chapter. So Rondo's going to take a little rest while I read this. He's just so tired. He gets so much exercise these days. It says, you find all kinds of things in a library book return box. Garbage, snowballs, soda cans. Stick a hole in a wall and you're asking for trouble. I should know. My name is DeweyCh1, and I am the former director of the Spencer Public Library in Spencer, Iowa. At our library, the book return slot was in a back alley across the street from the town's middle school, so rocks and snowballs were the least of our worries. Several times we were startled in the middle of the day by a loud explosion from the back of the library. Inside the book return box, we'd find a firecracker. After the weekend, the drop box would also be full of books, so every Monday morning, I took them out of the box and loaded them onto one of our book carts. Same thing every week, until one morning, one of the coldest mornings of the year, when I came in with the book cart and found Jean Hollis Clark, a fellow librarian, standing dead still in the middle of the staff room. I heard a noise from the drop box, Jean said. What kind of noise? I think it's an animal. A what? An animal, Jean said. I think there's an animal in the drop box. That was when I heard it, a low rumble from under the metal cover. It didn't sound like an animal. It sounded like an old man clearing his throat. But the opening at the top of the chute was only a few inches wide. So that would be quite a sneeze for an old man. It had to be an animal, but what kind? I got down on my knees, reached over to the lid, and hoped for a chipmunk. What I got instead was a blast of freezing air. The night before, the temperature had reached minus 15 degrees, and that didn't take into account the wind, which cut under your coat and squeezed your bones. And on that night, of all nights, someone had jammed a book into the return slot, wedging it open. It was as cold in the box as it was outside, maybe colder, since the box was lined with metal. It was the kind of cold that made it almost painful to breathe. I was still catching my breath, in fact, when I saw the kitten huddled in the front left corner of the box. It was tucked up in a little space underneath a book, so all I could see at first was its head. It looked gray in the shadows, almost like a little rock, and I could tell its fur was dirty and tangled. Carefully, I lifted the book. The kitten looked up at me slowly and sadly, and for a second, I looked straight into its huge golden eyes. Then it lowered its head and sank down into its hole. At that moment, I lost every bone in my body and just melted. The kitten wasn't trying to appear, though. It wasn't trying to hide. I don't even think it was scared. It was just hoping to be saved. I lifted the kitten out of the box. It was so small that my hands nearly swallowed it. We found out later it was 8 weeks old, but it looked like it was barely 8 days old. It was so thin I could see every rib. I could feel its heart beating, its lungs pumping. The poor kitten was so weak it could barely hold up its head, and it was shaking uncontrollably. It opened its mouth, but the sound was weak and ragged. And the cold. That's what I remember most because I couldn't believe a living creature could be so cold. It felt like there was no warmth at all. So I cradled the kitten in my arms to share my heat. It didn't fight. Instead, it snuggled into my chest and laid its head right against my heart. "Oh my," said Jean. "The poor baby," I said, squeezing tighter. Neither of us said anything for a while. We were just staring at the kitten. Finally, Jean broke the silence. "How do you think it got in there?" I wasn't thinking about last night. I was only thinking about right now. It was too early to call the veterinarian, who wouldn't be in for an hour, but the kitten was so cold. Even in the warmth of my arms, I could feel it shaking. "We've got to do something," I said. Jean grabbed a towel and we wrapped the little fellow up until only its pink nose was sticking out. Its huge, beautiful eyes were staring from the shadows. "Let's give it a warm bath," I said. "Maybe that will stop the shivering." I filled the staff room sink with warm water, testing it with my elbow as I clutched the kitchen in my arms. It slid into the sink like a block of ice. Jean found some shampoo in the art closet and I rubbed the kitten slowly and lovingly. As the water turned grayer and grayer, the kitten's wild shivering turned to soft purring, and I smiled. This kitten was tough, but it was so very young. When I finally lifted it out of the sink, it looked like a newborn, huge lidded eyes and big ears sticking out from a tiny head, wet, scared, and meowing quietly for its mother. We dried it with the blow dryer we used for drying glue at craft time, and within 30 seconds, I was holding a beautiful, long-haired orange tabby. The kitten had been so filthy before, I thought it was gray. By this time, there were 4 people in the staff room, each cooing over the kitten. 8 hands touched it, seemingly at once. The other 3 staffers talked over one another while I stood silently cradling the kitten like a baby and rocking back and forth. "Where did it come from?" "The drop box." "No." "Is it a boy or a girl?" I glanced up. They were all looking at me. "A boy," I said. "He's beautiful. How old is he? How did he get in the box?" I wasn't listening. I only had eyes for the kitten. "It's so cold, bitterly cold, the coldest morning of the year." A pause then. "Someone must have put him in the box." "That's awful. Maybe they were trying to save him. I don't know. He's so helpless. He's so young. He's so beautiful. Oh, he's breaking my heart." I put him down on the table. The poor kitten could barely stand. The pads on all 4 of his paws were frostbitten, and over the next week they would turn white and peel off. And yet the kitten managed to do something truly amazing. He steadied himself on the table and slowly looked up into each face. Then he began to hobble. As each librarian reached to pet him, he rubbed his tiny head against her hand and purred. It was as if he wanted to personally thank every person he met for saving his life. By now it had been 20 minutes since I had pulled the tiny kitten out of the box, and I'd had plenty of time to think through a few things. The once common practice of keeping library cats, my plan to make the library more friendly, the logistics of bowls and food and cat litter, the trusting expression on the kitten's face when he burrowed into my chest and looked up into my eyes. So I was more than prepared when someone finally asked, "What should we do with him?" "Well," I said, as if the thought had just occurred to me, "maybe we can keep him." Okay, in chapter 2, it's probably hard for you guys to see, because it's my iPad. It says, "It's a boy." So you're going to have to get this book, and I looked on the Westwood Public Library's website, or Minuteman, and they do have it to borrow as an ebook, and they also have it to borrow as an audiobook. So if you want to read a true story about a little kitten that was put into the return box at the library and find out if they get to keep him and what happened, then you need to get Dewey, the library cat. I'll show you the cover one more time. That's what it looks like, again, by Vicki Myron. Oh, and there's a whole bunch of Deweys because there's a Dewey for adults. They have a picture book that's a Dewey the library cat. So you want this exact cover, the red cover with the blue book underneath, because that is the level for elementary school kids. So it really is an awesome book, and they have pictures of Dewey. Okay, I miss you guys all tremendously, and stay busy. You'll have lots to do starting Monday, and I hope to see you all soon. Bye.